Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. The Central Bureau of Investigation, or CBI, is India's premier anti-corruption agency. But over the years, its reputation has become tainted. A lot of people have lost faith in the agency and feel that it is working at the behest of the ruling government. And when it comes to politicians, it appears that more often than not, the CBI mostly targets those in the opposition.
A team of CBI officials have raided the residence of the TMC MLA from Bijpur in North 24 Parganas.
CBI sleuths raided Kejriwal's number 2 Manish Sisodia's house this morning.
The CBI is conducting searches at multiple residential and official premises of senior Congress leader P. Chidambaram across Delhi.
The CBI has registered a fresh case against Lalu Prasad Yadav and his daughter for alleged...
Now, this is the reason why many political leaders like Arvind Kejriwal, Tejasvi Yadav, and even PM Narendra Modi have spoken out against the CBI in the past. The agency has been called a caged parrot, the Congress Bureau of Investigation, and has been considered part of BJP's Jamai, or son-in-law trinity, which includes the income tax and the enforcement directorate.
और षड्यंत्रों का लिए उनका सबसे बड़ा औजार है सीबीआई. ये कांग्रेस ब्यूरो ऑफ इन्वेस्टिगेशन है.
आज ये बीजेपी वाले धमकी दे रहे हैं दिल्ली के लोगों को. कहते हैं हमारे पास ईडी है, इनकम टैक्स है, सीबीआई है, दिल्ली पुलिस है, सारी दौलत है. तुम्हारे पास क्या है?
बीजेपी जिससे जिससे डरती है वहां ये अपने 3 जमाई आगे कर देते हैं. पहला जमाई सीबीआई, दूसरा जमाई ईडी, तीसरा जमाई इनकम टैक्स.
But is that really the case? Does the CBI mostly target politicians from the opposition parties? A recent Indian Express investigation set out to find just that. And it revealed that this was actually true. In the past 18 years, close to 200 key politicians have been booked, arrested, raided, or questioned by the CBI. And according to the investigation, 80% have been from the ranks of the opposition. And this trend has in fact sharply increased under the current NDA government. Now, to know more about this, we spoke to Indian Express's Deeptiman Tiwary, who conducted this investigation. And he began by telling us that CBI's image first started getting tainted under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's regime.
That's how institutions began to be, let's say, destroyed, because Indira Gandhi coined a new term for Indian bureaucracy, and that was commitment to administration, commitment to the government. So once the bureaucracy gets committed to the government of the day, then obviously the institution becomes subservient to the powers that be.
He says that this was the case across the bureaucracy, and that we even saw this happen with the judiciary during the emergency. Deeptiman says that whenever regimes have been stronger, they have been able to twist the arm of agencies like the CBI. On the other hand, when the government has been formed by a string of coalitions, then the CBI has enjoyed more independence.
That's what we have seen since the Indira Gandhi regime, and it has continued till date. In fact, even at that time, CBI was accused of bias or not investigating cases independently, and it only kept on increasing as the years went by.
He says that if we were to look at the era of the UPA, that is the period between 2004 to 2014, there were 72 leaders that were under the probe of the CBI. And out of these, 43 were opposition leaders, so approximately 60%.
Yet 29 leaders were from Congress and its allies. As we all would remember, the UPA2 era was all about Congress scams. 2G, CWG, coal scam, and so many other scandals that we can all remember. In fact, if you look at the major cases, UPA was actually investigating itself. The only other cases where it went after the principal opposition party, which is the BJP, were the Sohrabuddin fake encounter case where the CBI arrested then State Home Minister Amit Shah. And there were also allegations of the agency trying to fix Narendra Modi in Gujarat riots cases. And there were some other BJP leaders also which were under the scanner of the agency in those string of cases.
Like the Ishrat Jahan case, where officers of the Ahmedabad police crime branch were accused of the encounter killing of 4 people. Or the Sohrabuddin Sheikh fake encounter case, in which 22 people were said to be involved.
And similarly, the CBI had also gone after Trinamool Congress leaders in cases such as Rose Valley and Sardha scam and all those cases. And so many chit fund cases basically of Ponzi schemes.
But he says that when we come to the NDA era, which began in 2014, we find that the overwhelming majority of politicians being probed are from the opposition. So during the UPA, the figure was 60%. But now the percentage of opposition leaders under the scanner of the CBI is over 95.
Out of 124 political leaders under probe, 118 are opposition leaders. Only 6 are from the BJP. So we see that there is a government which has full majority, more than 300 seats. There was a government which was a coalition one. Under the UPA era, let's remember that the UPA and the Manmohan Singh government was also accused of using the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate to coerce potential allies into supporting its government. Let's not forget that in 2008, the Manmohan Singh government was in serious trouble as the left had threatened to pull out support if the US nuclear deal was actually ushered in by the government. At that very time, earlier, CBI had opened a preliminary inquiry against Mulayam Singh Yadav and his family. And in 2008, Mulayam Singh Yadav bailed the Manmohan Singh government out when the left pulled out support. And that case was eventually then a few years later, it was closed.
And he says that there were other cases also where UPA was coercing its own allies so that they would support the government. Like the CBI during that time had gone after Mayawati. But again, those cases did not reach any logical conclusion.
At the same time, under the UPA, what we understand and what we know, the Congress had this very simple formula that if there is an allegation made against the government, as long as it is against a minister or a political leader, CBI would investigate, the case would go on. As long as it was not touching the Gandhi family, the Congress was not really very, very bothered. This is the general understanding. It is something that the agency will always deny. Under the NDA, what we see is that any allegation against any person within the government is taken as an allegation against the entire government, against the Narendra Modi regime who has promised a corruption-free governance. So it's a perception. We can't really say that this is the truth. It's a perception that is there and is often articulated by opposition leaders.
And this was also reflected in the data. Deeptiman's investigation makes it clear that far fewer BJP leaders are under the scrutiny of the central agencies. And the party that is being scrutinized the most by the CBI is the Trinamool Congress.
There are as many as 30 politicians, including MPs, MLAs, and ministers, who are facing some other kind of probe. Then there is Congress, which is 26. Then there is RJD, 10 politicians, BJD, 10 politicians, YSRCP, 6 politicians, BSP, 6 politicians, TDP, 5 politicians. So that's how it goes. And there are many, many other political parties which are there in that list. And you can see, sort of juxtapose it as to where the ruling party has its direct political fight with. And currently the two parties it is fighting tooth and nail are TMC and Congress. And you see that more number of politicians from these are under scrutiny of the agency. Of course, the government's argument is that, look, our agencies are impartial and these people are corrupt. And so that is why they've been voted out and we have been voted in because people don't want this corruption. We are not corrupt, they are corrupt. And so they are being investigated for their deeds.
But the other thing that stands out in the investigation is also the timing of the CBI raids. In many instances, as soon as the person switches to another party and becomes part of the opposition, the CBI goes after them.
Let's remember one of the biggest examples, as I gave you, Mulayam Singh Yadav's disproportionate assets case. The CBI opened a case. Once he supported the government, the case was closed. It has happened in NDA also. In NDA, Himanta Biswa Sarma, when he was in the Congress, he was under probe in the Sarda chit fund scam. He was questioned by the CBI, and when he joined the BJP, there has been virtually no movement in the case against him. Similarly, in the Sarda chit fund scam and Narada sting operation case, TMC leaders such as Mukul Roy and Suvendu Adhikari were also being investigated, but CBI never filed a charge sheet against them, and this happened after they joined the BJP. Let's also see how CBI investigated TDP's Y.S. Chaudhary, and once investigations began against him, the BJP called him Vijay Mallya of Andhra Pradesh, and then he just joined BJP, and since then CBI has as yet not filed any charge sheet against him.
Deeptiman says that if we were to look back, we'll find that CBI had first come under the scrutiny during the infamous Bofors scam, in which the famous Swedish manufacturer Bofors AB had allegedly given huge bribes to politicians and civil servants in India to secure an important contract. Many had alleged that the CBI had failed to investigate the case properly and prosecute those involved, and this was done to protect those in power.
So in the Bofors case, we have seen there have been multiple stages where CBI has been found wanting whenever the Congress government has been in power. And one of the biggest reasons has been a virtual closure of the case, letting go of the Hinduja brothers, letting go of the Patrokis, freezing their accounts. And finally, when the Narendra Modi government came, so much time had lapsed that there was no chance of actually challenging the actions of the CBI because so much time had lapsed. And despite the Modi government wanting to reopen Bofors cases, the Attorney General gave an adverse opinion, and finally it was not even taken up by the courts because a lot of time had lapsed. So at the end of the day, criminal justice actually was the loser because the people responsible were not punished.
Similarly, in the coal allocation scam, the Supreme Court had criticized the CBI for showing the status of the report to the then Law Minister and officials of the Coal Ministry, and then making changes to the report.
And it was on that incident that the famous phrase which has got stuck to CBI was actually articulated by then CJI Justice R.M. Lodha, who said that CBI has become caged parrot speaking its master's voice. So this has been a continued thing, even in Jan Hawala Diary cases. When CBI was seen not acting against politicians of all hues, and there was this massive perception of CBI inaction when it came to taking any action against powers that be, that a petition was filed in the Supreme Court and the famous Vineet Narayan judgment came.
The Vineet Narayan judgment that Deeptiman talks about here was an important one. In this judgment, the Supreme Court fixed the tenure of the CBI director at 2 years. And it did this because the CBI would generally be at the beck and call of the government.
And then it gave statutory status to the Central Vigilance Commission. Then it also stipulated how CBI and ED directors would be chosen. Then later the Lokpal Act came. The Lokpal Act stipulated that a Prime Minister-led panel, which would also include Leader of Opposition and the Chief Justice of India, would choose the CBI director. The Vineet Narayan judgment had also struck down the single directive provision that was basically an executive order passed by the Rajiv Gandhi government, which said that any official, joint secretary and above level would not be investigated by the agency until the government allowed it.
Basically things that would give the agency more autonomy and would allow it to be less influenced by politicians. But he says that these provisions and changes were all diluted by the successive governments.
The single directive was first diluted by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, and the Congress government actually continued with it. Then the Modi government came and it has completely finished single directive, and it has gone far ahead of it and said that no public official can actually be investigated by CBI unless the government wants it. So obviously it makes CBI completely subservient to the government. In fact, CBI cannot take up any case unless the government wants it to take. So over a period of time, even the tenure thing, now with the government's rule of giving CBI director 5-year tenure, but only 2 fixed-year tenure and rest of the tenure being at the pleasure of the government. So you're basically dangling a carrot in front of the CBI director that if you toe my line, I will continue to give you extended tenures. Now it is entirely up to the integrity of the CBI director to refuse to have extended tenures, or integrity of the government to not ask CBI director to toe its line for an extended tenure and merely measure him on his performance. So it leaves a lot of things to subjectiveness of two parties. So almost all the provisions to give autonomy to the agency have actually over the years been diluted.
Similarly, the other thing that also influences CBI officers is the promise of a post-retirement job. In fact, this problem is so big that there is even an old joke about it.
It does not apply anymore now because CBI is seen to be completely subservient to the government. But earlier there used to be a joke about CBI director, that a CBI director has 3 phases of his tenure, and gratitude, attitude and platitude. Gratitude is 6 months of the tenure when he is very thankful to the government and listens to everything that the government says because he is very thankful that he has been made CBI director. So that is called the gratitude period. Then after those 6 months he realizes, oh my God, I'm the CBI director. I have so much powers. So he starts to flex some muscles. And that happens for about a year. Then he's flexing his muscle. He's listening to some things from the government. He's not listening to other things. He's sometimes putting his foot down. Those things happen. Whatever elbow room he can make, he makes those elbow rooms. Then in the last 6 months, he realizes, oh my God, now I'm going to retire. I'm going to lose my Lutyens bungalow. What am I going to do? Oh my God, one of my colleagues has become governor. This fellow has become NHRC chairman. That fellow has become something. So he starts retiring his post-retirement plan. That is called platitude. Then he begins to again try to please the government as much as he can so that he gets some post-retirement job. So, of course, this is a joke, but in many instances, this has been very, very true. And we have seen CBI directors like Ashwini Kumar being made governor of Nagaland by the UPA, this government giving 5-year tenures and dangling carrot in front of. PC Sharma became NHRC member, who was a former director. So all these kind of post-retirement jobs also are a kind of allurement for the CBI director to keep towing the government line so that the government will give them some sort of a post-retirement job. That only dilutes the integrity of the institution in the long run.
And this is obviously not just the case with CBI, but with other central agencies as well. For example, Deeptiman's investigation also revealed that in the past 18 years, as many as 147 key politicians were probed by the Enforcement Directorate, and over 85% were from the opposition ranks. And no matter how much experts, civil society groups, and opposition leaders criticize this problem, Deeptiman says that unless the government is willing to do something about it, nothing will change.
Frankly, there have been suggestions that if you want to give 5-year tenure to the CBI director, make it a fixed tenure. Why do you want it to be at the pleasure of the government? After all, even for the fixed 2-year tenure, there is a provision that the director can be removed in extraneous circumstances. Now, you would want to remove the director only in extraneous circumstances. So why do you want his tenure to be till the pleasure of the government? The FBI director has a fixed tenure. It is not at the pleasure of the government. And there have been opinions about Section 17A being amended where no public official can be investigated unless the central government wants it. You've basically totally made the agency subservient to the government. So those are some of the things that can be done. But again, it is the government of the day which will have to bring a legislation or an amendment. So unless the government wants it to be done, I don't think it is going to be done. And this is true of all governments. I'm not talking about this government or that government. I don't think tomorrow the Congress government is going to amend Section 17A. So that's how things are. Everybody wants agencies to be subservient to them.
And even though we are talking about opposition leaders here, he says that this problem should concern the average Indian citizen. Because just like those in the opposition, the CBI and other agencies have the power to go after you as well.
So you say something against the government, or you don't like something that the government does, and there could be an income tax raid or an ED raid, or there could be something. See, it is said that if the policeman chases your car long enough, he'll find a broken tail light or will break it. So whether you've done something wrong or you haven't done something wrong, you will be found wanting under the law somewhere, okay, if the government wants to fix you. So that's not a really great sign for a democracy. Okay, fine. You want to become China? Fine. China is also prospering. You want to become China? That's a choice that the nation has to make. But as a democracy, these are not good signs. Institutions are not functioning independently.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.